Peace and love, family. Welcome to another Read Book Club discussion. Tonight, we are discussing the final chapter, chapter 12 of The Color of Law by Ricard Rothstein. I am your host, Dr. Ma'at, and I have with me my big brother, Brother T. Wolo. Brother T, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listening audience.
Hey family, how you doing? This is Brother T. Once again joining you this Sunday, checking out this chapter, Considering Fixes, chapter 12. We went on a long journey, and I look forward to discussing this chapter. If you want to check me out on social media, you want to see a crazy guy turn coins into wearable jewelry, check me out at JT Corn Rings on Instagram, JT Corn Rings on Facebook and YouTube. If you want to see me do crazy dances with my daughter, check me out on TikTok. so, but on Sundays, starting the new year, we'll be tackling some more books, discussing some more important issues.
Absolutely. And family, his links to all of his social media, his TikTok, his IG, Facebook, all of that stuff is posted under the description of the video. So just go to the description. If you notice, some of you all don't look at my descriptions, but everyone I bring on this platform, if you go to the description and you look, you'll see links to my programs and my social media platforms, as well as their programs and websites and social media platforms. So family, take a moment out to share this show. Share the show. I don't like to actually call it the show, Brother T. Like, share the discussion. We have powerful discussions over here, and we try to make it fun, with sound effects and jokes and things of that nature. But these are serious and powerful discussions that we have on this platform. And I want to just take a moment out to salute all of the troopers who have been here every show, every discussion you all are watching from chapter 1 all the way to chapter 12. And this was a powerful book, family. And so T, I can't thank you enough. You know how they always say, if I had 1,000 tongues, I wouldn't be able to thank you enough for recommending this book and for recommending The Color of Law, because now I have a clear perspective, a clear and very true perspective as to why, America is segregated and how that impacted us for generations, how that impacted our ability to build wealth, right? And send our babies to school and survive economic financial hardships because of the racial segregation. And so it's like, Brother T, I have receipts. We all have receipts now because of you. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. So family, take a moment out, thumb up this discussion, share this discussion. Let's get the information out tonight. The title of the chapter, as Brother T said, is called Considering Fixes. I call this discussion Separate or Integrate. That's what I call this discussion, Brother T. And let me tell you why. Because he mentions all of these fixes, but all of these fixes entailed integrating into the dominant society. None of the fixes that he proposed, and maybe he didn't, because he did put a disclaimer in there. He was like, look, some of the stuff that I want to propose, I don't even think America's ready for that. So these are things that I will propose, even though I think these may not get through. But so he kind of put a disclaimer in there. But I noticed the programs and policies that he recommended in this chapter all entailed us integrating with them. He never talked about shifting the power dynamic between us and them. It was, hey, come integrate with us and live in better neighborhoods and have your children attend better schools, right? And you'll be making some more money. You'll get better job opportunities. But none of the programs, like I said, or policies made us, and I don't expect them to, made us a powerful and sovereign people. It entailed us integrating with them. So I titled this discussion, even though the title of the show title of the discussion is Considering Fixes, I titled it Separate or Integrate. And I think that anyone who is watching this discussion right now will tell you that I am all for the former, to separate. But, Brother T, to separate, but give me my reparations. Cut the check and let us build and do on our own. Even give us the land. Okay, I know that you all in the South, most of you on the South, we'll give you these states, and you get what I'm saying, Brother T? That's where I'm at. I don't want to integrate with your society, and you still control the power and the policies, and we're just integrating with you to live comfortable under racism and white supremacy, under white domination. And that's what I got from him. But let me take a moment out, Brother T, to shout out the Maadi and family that's in the building. Brother Kiwaju White, he said, peace and love, Dr. Oyama. Peace and love to your family. Miss Old Lady said, peace and greetings, Brother T and Dr. Mai. Welcome back from your rest in the sun. Thank you so much, Miss Old Lady. And you know, family, I went to the Bahamas. I couldn't tell all my business. You know, you're not supposed to tell all your business on social media. But a good friend of mine went to the Bahamas for two reasons. One, to celebrate a birthday, and two, not my birthday, but one, to celebrate a birthday, and two, to attend a wedding. Beautiful couple. Shout out to the Ellisons. They just had a beautiful wedding on the beach. And so I went there to, you know, support them. But while I was gone, Miss Old Lady and family that's in the building, and I'm going to shout out the rest of the family, but I want to show you all what happened. So while I was gone, you know, on a vacation, and Brother T, you know, I'm at the port where they brought our ancestors in. I'm pouring libation in the port. I'm pouring, got the water in my hands. So I'm there. I'm at the places where our ancestors live. I'm taking pictures by the houses and all kinds of stuff. So for me, when I go to the places like, you know, the Bahamas, where I travel, I like to go and commune with the ancestors. I'm not really a resort or cruise ship sort of girl. Like, I went to a museum, they call it the Slave Museum in downtown Bahamas. I went there to learn the history of the Arawak speaking people that were there, you know, in the Bahamas. And so I learned the history of them, and a lot of their history actually parallels with our history. And so I went on a tour. You know, I was out there with the people. You know, then I went, you know, to the west part of the Bahamas, where it was a port where they brought our ancestors in, and you can actually walk up the steps. They had to walk up these steps onto the island. So I walked down the steps to the ocean and put my hands on it, and I prayed and meditated. And so those are the sorts of things that I do when I travel, you know, out of the country. But anyway, while I was gone, Thursday night, I'm scrolling through Instagram, and I follow a page called Murder Inc. Baltimore. And so I'm in my hotel room, and I pull up the browser, Brother T, and literally one of my mentees, my former student, like a little son to me, it came up, 24-year-old real estate aspiring mogul, shot in Park Heights neighborhood, where he just recently made an investment purchase. And the person I was with said that I started hyperventilating. That's how bad it was for me. And I'm getting emotional right now. He was the brother, Brother T. I don't know if I showed you pictures from the buck breaking showing that we had in Baltimore, but there's a clip of me praising him at the buck breaking documentary showing, where I told the community how proud I was of him. He became an entrepreneur because he took me in the fall of 2018, and the students at Morgan know that I push entrepreneurship. So when he graduated with his electrical and computer engineering degree, the spring of 2020, he pursued entrepreneurship, and he found his niche. It was him and his partner who's watching. Peace be upon you, Brother Abasi. Harmony, he's watching right now. He actually texted me and wanted to know if I was going live, and I told him that I would be talking about this. So he's watching. But they started a company called Limitless Real Estate, and they put up a lot of videos just talking about their journey, and you know, and they were going into Park Heights, and they were redeveloping the neighborhood, the segregated neighborhoods that America policies, Brother T, created. Those segregated neighborhoods, those impoverished Black neighborhoods, they were actually flipping houses. This was actually his first flip. He was been in the real estate game for 3 years, but they were doing like a lot of contracts and stuff like that, selling contracts, buying contracts, and doing that. But this was the first home that they actually purchased and fixed up and was going to sell. But again, this was a part of a larger plan to redevelop a segregated, impoverished neighborhood that we know from reading The Color of Law was created by our federal, state, and local government. And so anyway, this Wednesday, family, I've the MSU family, the Morgan State University family, the Tendaya family, myself, and some of the student organizations at MSU and Morgan State University, we will be going to the place where he was murdered, and where there will be a rally for peace. We're going to be demanding accountability and justice for Jaleel Rashard George. The family asked me to speak during reflection, so I will be attending his funeral. I will be there. I'll be front and center for the family. And so, anyway, family, I just wanted to let you know what was going on. If you're in the DMV area, make sure you meet me out here, okay, at this address at 5 p.m. Rally for Peace, okay, on December the 14th, okay, 2537 Loyola Southway at 5 p.m. And so Brother T is literally like I came home Friday, but I found this out Thursday night. And like I told everyone, hey, how you feeling, Doc? You know, all my students, you hit me up, people, how are you feeling? I said, my heart is broken right now. You know, my heart is broken. This young man was 24 years old, Brother T, very positive. Asked me, him and his partner, Doc, what books are you reading? What books can you recommend to us? And I recommended their first book, Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. He called me. He said, Doc, I've read the book, and now I see why you think the way you think and you speak the way you speak. He said, I want to read every book that got you to where you are mentally. And so the second book I gave him was From the Browder File by Anthony T. Browder. But unfortunately, we never had a chance to discuss it. So anyway, family, I want to continue. I just want to shout out to my audience family. I see Brother George Torrance is in the building. He says, Hotep to the family. Sister Crystal Denise, she said, greetings, family. Multitasking tonight. So she said she'll be in and out. She said, great chapter and book. And also, Sister Crystal Denise, throw the book that you recommended for the youth in the chat. It was a book she recommended, and so we're going to start up the R.E.A.D Junior Book Club. Okay, the third week in January, family, and so they're going to go on at 6 o'clock, from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. You know, the Junior Book Club will be discussing the books. Okay, and probably from 6 to 7, or maybe from 6:30 to 7. I don't want to keep, our little kids don't, they get kind of antsy, so we may keep them for 30 minutes to an hour online. But she recommended a title which I think is phenomenal. It's a book about Ida B. Wells, and so Sister Crystal dropped that drop the title in the chat, so that people can start getting the book, okay, for their children. All right, A Beautiful Mind, she says, peace and love to everyone, peace and love, beloved. By the time 103 said, peace and black family to you, beloved. Robin Benton said, good evening to your family. The Maadian family's in the building. There go Baba right there, Brother T. Baba said, Ma'at Hotep to you, Baba. Ma'at Hotep to you. I see Dr. Craig Samuels is in the building. He says, greetings, Dr. Ma'at and Brother JT. Peace to you, Dr. Craig. And it says, by the time 103, the messenger said that separation is the best and only answer. Ashe. Bobby E. Wright says, separate. Oh, you already know. That's where I'm at. Separate. Let's separate. Anthony Holly, peace and love to you, brother. El Haj says, thanks again. This book club is definitely needed. We appreciate your words. I see Brother Steve. Greetings. That's the brother from St. Lou. Greetings, Brother Steve. CJ Young is in the building. Peace and love to you, CJ Young. By the time said it was a trick. Yeah, the integration was. And it says, in a lie. Ashe. Becky Brown is in the building. Peace to you, Becky Brown. I see Sister Denise, Denise said, she said, I agree, Dr. Ma'at. We are not helpless, independent. Yes, we just need equal resources. Yes, we don't need to be, thank you. All we need is the resources. We'll build our own. Steve said, at the end of the day, peace and love, a BB588 to you, Todd 313. Real truth and power, peace and love to you, brother. Race first to you. The Queen Mother, Amina, she said, welcome. Please like, subscribe, and share with the world. Ashe. Let's get the likes up, family. Let's get the information out. Real Truth and Power said, damn, Paul. Yeah. Broke my heart, man. Broke my heart. Steve said, unbelievable. Yeah, man. Broke my heart. Oh, thank you so much. A beautiful mind. Yeah, man. This was heartbreaking. And so, and I love my students. Any of you already know that I love them like they're my children. And they'll tell you. She treats us like I praise them and I get on them, like they were my children. And that's how it should be, when we're educating our babies. So I appreciate your condolences, Queen Mother Amina. Real Truth said prayers up to our brother and may he be what? Yes, Ashe, Ashe. Yeah. Oh, Real Truth and Power said he gonna be in the building. I appreciate that. Let the family know. Let the UNIA know. Real Truth and Power. Let them know. All right, what's going down on Wednesday? We need a lot of organizations out there. So appreciate the support, brother. Ears to the street said, let's go. That's right. Let's get it. Johnny Johnson, El Paso, Texas, is tuned in. All right. Okay. Oh, love you too, Queen Mother. All right. And here's the title, family, for the Junior Book Club. Okay. The first title is Warrior Princess, A People's Biography of Ida B. Wells by Todd Stephen Burrows. Please, family, get this book for your young baby. All right. Because it's cool that we're learning this information, but we have to find a way to include our children and to make it fun for our babies. And so our babies will be learning what we're learning, but a kiddie version of it, right? And so we'll make sure that they're learning and growing in knowledge, just like we are learning and growing in knowledge. So thank you so much, Sister Crystal. Make sure, family, you get this book, Warrior Princess, A People's Biography of Ida B. Wells by Todd Stephen Burrows. Make sure you get it. Try to get it from a black bookstore, okay, an independent black bookstore like Everyone's Place or Black and Nobel or Positive Vibes, one of those bookstores, okay, rather before you run to Amazon, because I know Amazon makes it very easy, makes it very convenient. You put your order in, it's on your doorstep the next day. With the black bookstores, we got a call. Do you have it? I'll look for it. They may get back to you. They may not get back to you. Right. And so then they may say, oh, I got to order it. So it's kind of like a lengthier process, but we got to be patient with our people. Okay. And so make sure you support family. And I think, oh, Brother T, I wanted to mention the next titles. So in the top of the year, family, grab these books. I discussed these books the last discussion, but I don't know if you tuned in or not. But we're going to be reading at the top of the year, They Were Her Property by Dr. Stephanie Rogers. They Were Her Property. And in this book, we're learning about the role that white women played in the enslavement of our people. Dr. Stephanie Rogers said that at least 40% of the slave masters were white women. But that is the history that they don't tell us. Typically, when we look at Hollywood or Hollyweird, when they show slave masters, right, they typically show the white man. But the white woman was just as involved in slavery as the white man, benefited, okay, and she was just as brutal as her male counterpart. And those were the words of Dr. Stephanie Rogers. And so we will be reading They Were Her Property. We're also going to be reading Slavery by Another Name, which talks about the history of the Jim Crow era. And Ricard Rothstein, mentioned this book, Slavery by Another Name, in I believe chapter 10 or chapter 11. So we're going to be reading that book, okay? And it's going to be giving us some details about the Jim Crow era that we don't know. Some details we'll learn, okay? And then the next book will be When Affirmative Action Was White. They always push the narrative that Black people benefited from affirmative action solely, right? That it was created for Black people and that Black people were the sole beneficiaries of affirmative action. And that's not true. All right. So we're going to be reading When Affirmative Action Was White. And then our fourth book will be From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century by Dr. William Sandy Darity. All right, family. So let's go to it. Brother T, go ahead, Brother T, and start us off.
Okay, chapter 12. We are talking about considering fixes. 3 points I want to start off with that the author presented in this chapter. Okay, the first point is, as a nation, we have paid an enormous price for avoiding an obligation to remedy the unconstitutional segregation we have allowed to fester. That's one point that he wanted to bring home. The second point, many of other serious national problems originate with residential segregation or have become intractable because of it. We have greater political aid and social conflict because we must add unfamiliarity with fellow citizens of different racial backgrounds to the challenges we confront in resolving legitimate disagreements about public issues. The third point he posed on the first page was whites may support political candidates who pander to their sense of racial entitlement while advocating policies that perpetuate the inferior economic opportunities that some whites may face. Interracial political alliance may become more difficult to organize when whites develop overly intolerant judgments of their unfortunate from need to justify their own acceptance of segregation that so obviously conflicts both their civil ideas and their religious ones.
Mm.
Okay, why I came up with those 3 points from the start of the chapter is that we all know that whites do not want to hear about the atrocities today. So we want to put the frame of reference on what they try to fight a year or two ago by not teaching about the atrocities in the classroom.
Come on, T.
Do you understand? We could they can no longer brush us away by saying slavery happened so long ago. And even if we erase that argument, we can point to 1940 to today about the atrocities that we face. They will be committed, they will have to be committed to fix them once they acknowledge the atrocities. See, they can easily say, I'm not responsible. We had our president, or some people's president, say that I'm not going to be responsible for what my grandparents done. But we can hold him responsible about these atrocities of racial segregation because he was in office when some of these laws were put into place. So, in that point, is that most of the things that happen to us happen because the racial segregation. Now, in the integration, I understand that in the first parts of this chapter, the 3 points that I brought up, even when they gave us funding in the form of Section 8, they made sure that the funding was only spent in impoverished areas.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We had no ability to take the funding, say, if it was reparations, and take it to an area that will allow our dollars to flourish and our neighborhoods to flourish.
Facts.
They only allowed us to go to the flourishing neighborhoods on our own dime. And policies they put in place to say, hey, if you wanted to develop there, you can always have to have a place for impoverished people, but we give them no funding. So either we'll give them funding to stay segregated and we'll build no resources around them, or we'll give them the ability to move in a more flourishing neighborhood economically, but they got to go on their own dime. This is how they choose to fix the issues. So those 3 points that I brought up. First, understanding that America avoid the obligation to remedy the unconstitutional segregation. Number two, many of the national problems either originate with the residential segregation or have become intractable because of it, meaning that because how they handle the situation of keeping us put or moving us forward, they said we're not going to help you.
Mm.
If we're going to give you funding, we'll give it to you in the form of Section 8 to help you live in a community which homes do not build equity, that still have crime. So we think that we're doing something by staying there. We'll give you the money to stay there. Well, government, give me the same monies to move to a neighborhood and give me funding as if you gave the whites. No, we're not doing that. If we will give you the ability to move there, but you got to go on your own dime. So it doesn't help us. We're not allowed to build. That's what I got for the first page or the beginning of considering fixes. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, that I think you summarized it beautiful. I was gonna move to the next one because
Okay.
you killed that, brother T. She talks so at the top of he talks at the top of page 196. He said the existence of black ghettos is a visible reminder, right, of the inequalities in history. You know, right? Like he says, I'm sorry, let me read this, family. The existence of black ghettos is a visible reminder of our inequalities in history, a reminders whose implications are so uncomfortable that we find ways to avoid them. And that's what you were talking about, brother T. They, it's like they don't want to deal with it. That's why they don't want to teach critical race theory, and they have this idea. I'm not responsible. They don't. We don't want to make white kids feel bad. We don't want them to feel guilty and all of this stuff. So they want to do away with the history. That's why they're rewriting the history as we speak. And I love how he gets into that later on in the chapter. A lot of those textbooks, brother T, that are used in the school system. Just like we're being miseducated, those white kids are being miseducated too. And so that's why I don't look at the school system as education at all. It's far from education. It's just an indoctrination system. That's all it is a brainwashing system. I don't view it as education at all. Education is supposed to be empowering. Education should teach you how to solve problems, how to critically think. Our kid and education should affirm who you are, right? Who you are, where you come from, and where you're going. If you are not being educated in that way, right? You're not being educated. You're being brainwashed. You're being indoctrinated. And so, anyway, he goes on to talk about how he says segregation can give whites an unrealistic belief of their own superiority. Now, so do you remember during the Brown versus the Board of Education? I believe there were two psychologists. I believe it was a husband and wife team, Dr. Kenneth Clark, remember, who's famous for the doll test and all of that. And what they noticed was that Black children had developed an inferiority complex as a result of segregation, right? But what they didn't talk about, and not that they were trying to talk about this, but at the same time that Black children were developing a subconscious inferiority complex, white children, okay, were developing a subconscious superiority complex, right? They were developing that. So while we were developing, our children were developing a subconscious inferiority complex, white kids were developing a subconscious superiority complex, during that particular time. Why? Because the curriculum is Eurocentric. It's centered around them. Literally, their history is great. Everything is great. They were everything. They were inventors. They were doctors. They were astronauts. They were the first that ever did it. And so all that did, you get what I'm saying, brother T, was create a subconscious inferiority complex in white people. And so anyway, he goes on, he says that segregation gave whites an unrealistic belief of their own superiority. So as soon as that label, white, that's why I have a book behind me. It's a 2-volume series, 2-part series, 2-volume book set. It's called The Invention of Whiteness. And so ever since that label was created and smacked on them, Dr. Jacqueline Badalora tells us in her book, Birth of a White Nation, that it gave material value and psychological value to whites. So they began to feel like they were superior to other people. And then think about this, brother T. You have whites living in segregated communities, right? And then you look at their communities, the communities look gorgeous, right? All of the amenities looks rich, clean, fully funded schools, their children are thriving. Then they look across the railroad tracks, right? And they look at our communities, which were segregated, underfunded, crime driven, drug infested. So then they say, oh, we're better. So segregation it affirmed their belief in their it affirmed their belief in their superiority. All right. And so at the bottom of the page, he goes on to say, for low-income African American children, the social and economic advantages which they frequently come to school make higher achievement more difficult. And see, that's still to this day. Where's my daggone sound effect to this day? Hold on, brother T. I gotta look for it. This to this day. Oh, here it is. Here it is.
Day. To this day. To this day.
Come on, brother T. to this day. So what they do is your children in Baltimore City, they are underperforming in comparison to these suburban white children. Well, these white children don't have to navigate, right, the social and economic issues that black children have to navigate. So so we expect these children, right, who live in these impoverished neighborhoods. Mommy is working full time, daddy's working full time. Sometimes the granny is taking care of the children. Sometimes the parents are on drugs. Then you got gangs in the community. Then these children don't know when they're going to get their next meal from. And we expect them to go to school and get straight A's. We expect them to pass all of the standardized tests. But I love what he says right here, Brother T. For low-income African-American children, the social and economic disadvantages with which they frequently come to school make higher achievement more difficult. It's more difficult for our kids, and you got all of that stuff on you. You go outside and this teddy bear's wrapped around the pole in the shrine out there because somebody got shot last night and you heard the gunshots. They coming to school with PTSD, Brother T, anxiety, hungry, didn't take a bath last night. Some of them living in abandoned homes, and we expect our children, they should perform the same way as these white children who don't have to navigate those issues. So he goes on to say at the top of 197, he says a child who has more frequent absences from poor health, unreliable transportation, having to stay home to care for younger siblings, or family instability will have less opportunity to benefit from instruction. True story, right? So it says if such a child attends school, then he goes on to talk about like teachers, right? And dealing with children who have, who have handicaps. So he says if such a child attends school where few others have, handicaps, a mostly middle school class, a teacher can devote special attention and help so that the child can accomplish more than he or she would otherwise. But if most students in the classroom share these impediments, teachers cannot devote special attention to each one. Can you imagine, Brother T, being a teacher in Baltimore City where you go into a classroom and the teacher to student ratio is 1 to 30, and then you have these 30 kids in your class, okay, who lives in the neighborhood, who all have these issues going on, right? Health issues. They might have some health issues, behavioral issues because they're acting out because of whatever's happening in the household. Brother T, let me know how I know. We were over East Baltimore. My program, Conscious Ingenuity, is in a lot of schools in Baltimore City. We were dealing with that, dealing with behavioral issues going in there. The children are acting out. One little boy, I took to him, oh, Brother T, it was my baby. I'm looking right at him. I can't place his name, but the teachers threw him in the program and said, he can't read, he can't write, he can't do math. Brother T, I tell you one thing. I had that little brother. I can show you a picture of him when I passed the mic to you. But I had him in there. My students had him in there learning about circuits. He was really good with his hands, and he could put together a circuit without us giving him a schematic. And you just got to tap into our children. You understand? And so anyway, he's talking about how, teachers, when it's just one of you and 30 of them, it's hard to devote special attention to certain students. So he goes on to say high average achievement is almost impossible to realize in a low income segregated school embedded in a segregated neighborhood. Many children in it could do much better in an integrated school, leading to their stronger and more likely positive contributions to society later as adults. I disagree. His solution is take those children, right, and send them to integrated schools for better, they'll get better education over there. Just send them to integrated schools. But what about when they go home, Brother T?
Mm-hmm.
So I go to an integrated school and I'm in there with, white kids and, white teachers, and the education may be what you perceive as better. But at the end of the day, I'm going home and I'm connected to a community that I need to fix. So the answer isn't just to integrate. Go ahead, Brother T.
Good point. I'm glad you continue to expound on that, because that's the point I wanted to bring up, and I wanted to ask you this question when he mentioned in the chapter on page 186 that part 1, as for children, segregation is not healthy for neither whites or African Americans, In segregated schools, neither can gain experiences navigating the diverse environment in which, as adults, they still have to make their way. So that was when I found, or when I thought that he was pushing for the integration instead of fixing the communities, giving the resources to the communities. So when that child does go back to the community,
Bingo.
it's order. So this is the problem that we face, that we will be facing in the future. It's not that we want to stay in our communities and build our communities. Will we have the adequate resources in order to make sure that it eliminates this health issue, the social issue, and things of that nature, so we can we can grow, right? Because the only remedies thus far in this chapter that we're speaking of now is integration, but it's nothing about fixing and building a resource center in our communities. So I suppose a quick question: what do our communities need in order to be responsive to our present needs?
The brother T, the ability first and foremost, in my opinion, the ability first and foremost to meet our basic physiological needs. Okay, a food, clothing, and shelter. That's what we
Mm-hmm.
need. The ability to do that. The resources to build economic engines in our own community. So businesses, real estate, all of that good stuff. So basic physiological needs, in my opinion, is number one. You can't go
Mm-hmm.
out here and throw your fist. Black power, get off the streets, do this. Well, what's the alternative? I need to feed my family, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this $10 an hour is not cutting it where we live, right? And my
Mm-hmm.
so I need a means of being able to meet my basic physiological needs, right? Food, clothing, and shelter, protection, adequate education. Like I said, the economic engine,
Mm-hmm.
political power. So power over our communities, right? So
Mm-hmm.
economic power, political power. What else, brother T? Am I thinking? I'm think I'm missing some stuff. I think
I'm
I'm missing some stuff. Go ahead.
I'm looking at we have in the comments
Hmm.
about gentrification. Our communities are being gentrified. Do
Absolutely.
do we have communities? In the sense of, we have to keep the thought on, when we come to our communities, we have to understand and control the resources. Understand what we have, what we're trying to do. Our communities raise healthy families. Kids that can be intellectuals. But the resources in our communities have to benefit us. Gentrified communities, you fix up the communities, but is it healthy?
That's right.
Is it still an industrial dump? Is it still smog? Is it, you know what I'm saying? So even if it's gentrified, you may fix the buildings up, but as he said, stated in his chapter, you're building new homes, but the resources are still the same. The communities are still the same. So is it any benefit to us? It will only be a benefit to us, segregated communities, when we control the resources and we have resources that help us to elevate, along with making sure we live in a healthy environment. So I just wanted to point out that in this part of the chapter, he's just pushing, hey, don't worry about fixing up the place you live. Just go and just go to school in a better neighborhood. You maybe can live in this better neighborhood, but we're going to leave this as it may, because gentrification really doesn't make it healthier. Gentrification don't really give us the resources that's needed for us
No,
to move forward. So
it
it
just
doesn't
raises.
help us.
No, it just raises the prices and pushes us out.
There you
That's what
go.
gentrification comes. All those keywords: gentrification, revitalization. All of those are keywords for white folks are moving in.
Mm-hmm.
Prices are going to go out, and we moving your tail out. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's what happens. And so I agree with you, brother T. We need the resources to be able to maintain and advance, our community.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we need. And absolutely. And so at the bottom of this, at the bottom, right before we close out in section 1, it says this false sense of superior that segregation fosters in whites contribute to their reaction of policies to
Mm-hmm.
integrate American society. You mentioned that earlier, brother T. Because they feel like they are superior,
Mm-hmm.
they are number one, They frown upon any type of policies that how dare we integrate with them? We're the others, right? We're the
Right.
others. We're too good to integrate with them. I mean, I'm speaking of in their words, their mentality. And so that's why they veto those policies. You want them to come in here with us? Ooh, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so literally he's saying that segregation feeds that. And so on page 198, he says the challenge is more difficult because low income, we're talking about integrating neighborhoods. He said the challenge is more difficult because low income African Americans today confront not only segregation, but also the income stagnation and blocked mobility faced by all Americans and families with low and moderate incomes. Historically, African Americans have made progress mostly when opportunity is expanding for all and whites are less fearful of competition from others. God damn it, brother T.
It's competition.
That's the only time that we progressed in America is when whites felt like they were progressing and had no competition. That's what he's saying. That during those eras, if you look at where blacks may have made some strides, where we made some strides, it was because all of America was making strides at
Mm-hmm.
that point in time, and whites didn't feel like we could compete with them. See, all of this stuff gives credence, and not that I didn't believe them, but I keep thinking about Dr. Claude
That's,
Anderson,
mm-hmm.
Powernomics, where Dr. Claude Anderson talked about racism being a competition, being a race for the resources.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about that. And that's why I always, when I go into the system, my classroom, I tell my students that when you go out here in the world, you must adopt and practice, and adopt and operate with a competitive mindset. You
Mm.
got it. It's about competition. It's about competition. And I always tell them, brother T, that you want to be the best. You want to be the conqueror. You want to go out there and you want to dominate. That's what I tell them, brother T. And sometimes my students, I see the young brothers, their chest be poked out, brother T. My student, one of them told me, Doc, they call me Dr. Bailey. Dr. Bailey, you make me feel like I can go out and conquer the world, because I get all pumped up, brother T, in the classroom. You go out there and you conquer the world. And you go out there with that competitive mindset. Don't go out there with that mediocre, I'm just going to get by mindset. You go out there and you conquer, and so those are the conversations I have. But it's very interesting. So that as long as whites feel like all of America is progressing and that they have no competition, then they're okay with the strides that the African American community makes. So anyway, at the bottom, he says, remedies are inconceivable as long as citizens, whatever their political views, continue to accept the myth of de facto segregation. It says, if segregation was created by accident or in undefined private prejudices, it is too easy to believe that it can be only reversed by accident or in some mysterious ways by changes in people's hearts. But if we, the public and policymakers, acknowledge that the federal, state, and local governments segregated our metropolitan areas, we may open our minds to considering how those same federal, state, and local government might adopt equally aggressive policies to desegregate. So what he's saying right here, brother T, he's saying, look, we need to get rid of that myth of de jure segregation. I mean, the myth of de facto segregation, meaning that, it just happened. It wasn't any intent to segregate America. It just happened due to people's prejudices, people's feelings. It wasn't really a push from the government, but we know now that we experienced de jure segregation and not de facto. So he's saying we got to do away with the myth. So in the next couple of pages, brother T, he said, well, maybe we need to start with the curriculum, right? In high school and in middle school, and do away with these textbooks that kind of casually mention segregation, but not the reason for segregation or the forces that created segregation and the concomitant effects of segregation. So he mentions one book called The Americas, Reconstruction, the 21st Century. He said in this particular book, it said the 2012 edition had this to say about residential segregation in the North, in quotes, African Americans found themselves forced into segregated neighborhoods. He said, that's it. One passive voice sentence, no suggestion of who might have done the forcing, and how it was implemented, right? So then he says, he goes on to a lot of stuff. He talks about how there's a paragraph in this same book that talks about the New Deal policies. Okay. And he says that, he says the authors do not mention that the enduring legacy of those policies, it talked about, how they impacted basically the Black community. I just don't want to get into every little thing, Brother T, because we'll be on here all night. So
it's a lot, sister. It's
yeah,
a
it's a lot.
lot, Dr. Mod.
It is a lot. And then he mentions another book called The United States History, Reconstruction to Present. And he says, in this particular book, he said it was nothing written about government policy to promote segregation in the North. It was spelled out in the FHA's manual. So in that particular book, Brother T, they kind of just passively mention segregation, but they don't mention that it was the government who segregated America and how that impacted the Black people. And if they did, Brother T, he's arguing that maybe the younger generation, the younger whites may say, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. If our government did that, then now I see why the legislators or the policymakers are proposing legislation that's going to undo this stuff, because they are aware of it. So he argues in this section that until the myth of de facto segregation is destroyed, we will continue to have white people who are going to oppose policies that will remedy those governmental racist policies that segregated America. Brother T?
Good point, Dr. Mod. Because if you think about this, it can always be used as an excuse. I didn't know. I had no clue. They understand the power of knowing the reason. And that part of the chapter kind of tripped me out when I seen the one lines. It kind of reminds me of what McGraw Hill, the book
Yeah.
came out, try to turn slavery to, what did they say? We wasn't slaves. We became agriculture.
Yeah, indentured servants or something like that. I know what you're talking about.
We came to the point slavery wasn't put out. They gave they they gave an example in the book as if it was a choice, that we were just, we were farmers. We went from slaves to farmers. And then, and only then, people met that company, McGraw Hill, I believe. I'm hoping that everyone knows the name of that publishing company. I don't want to butcher it, pass blame to the wrong one, but they're all complicit. They all were the same. Just as explained in this book, they never went into detail to teach our children or give them the information to pass the blame. So it gave the children the ability to think for themselves. Well, I don't see no big deal. Blacks live in that community because they want to live in that community. Not that they were forced to live in that community based off of policies. Not that the fact that mobs showed up and forced them and threw dynamite at their homes, or burned crosses in their front yard. This is the reasons why they had to stay in that community. They was forced to stay in that community. That couldn't be put out. So they found this colorful paragraph just to place, hey, they were just forced to stay there. So it is important that we teach our babies the real reasons so they can be armed with the truth. Because he made a point that that got kind of struck home. If we don't teach this information, the next generation won't know how to remedy it either. Matter of fact, they'll fall prey to all of the tools that they use to keep us out. You shared something with me this week while you was on the beach enjoying the breeze and the water. You shared with me about this gentleman who lost his land in Alabama, and the land was taken by the University of Alabama, and I think they bought it for like $900. It reminded me of the policies that they or the tactics they used to use when blacks moved into the neighborhood, and they say, "Hey, we'll offer you 15% more that you paid for, and if you don't do that, we'll use the scare tactics and stuff." Something has happened when the man turned down at $900. They went back to the books and started using their policies to take it from underneath him. And now we see an office or a building built on his land, and his descendants receive nothing for it. It just shows you the trickery that they go through. But if this education was given to the masses, to the next generations, they would have known, hey, we need to make sure we protect this land by fighting these policies, by making sure that we stand up for our ancestor who got us this land. But if we don't know, we not taught, it's not passed down at the dinner table, it's not talked about at the family meetings, we're left as prey in the field. Stuff will be snatched from us. So this is the reason why that part of this chapter should be fought against all costs. As you just made a perfect example at the beginning of this discussion with the children's book club. So we all can learn from the lessons of the past, so we can move forward and do what we have to do. So I agree with it 100% that this has to be the end of not educating ourselves and our loved ones, our babies.
Absolutely.
So it goes on to talk about, I think you discussed, if I'm not mistaken, page 200. I want to go ahead and talk about Romney.
Obama. I didn't get to Obama, so talk about Obama at the bottom first.
Okay, let's talk about Obama. Mm-hmm. In the 2015 Obama administration unveiled a rule to implement an underappreciated provision of the 1968 Fair Housing Act that requires jurisdictions to receive federal fundings to affirmatively further the purpose of the law. So it was a rule. It was something to say, hey, if you receive federal funding, you have to include African Americans or people who need a disadvantage, right? So it says the rule instructed cities, towns, suburbs to assess their concentrations or absence of disadvantaged populations and identify goals to remedy the segregated conditions. Now, this is a tricky one. Mm-hmm. The rules seem to assume that segregated white communities want to do right, but don't have the adequate information to do so. Once again, adequate information was the excuse. We knew nothing about it. That's why we didn't allow them inside our neighborhoods. If
Bingo.
we knew, we would have fixed it. You know, if we knew, we would have allowed the blacks to come in, right? Wrong. So the rules seem to assume that segregated white communities want to do the right thing, but don't have the adequate information. So giving suburbs around the country the benefit of the doubt may have been a smart way to encourage them to fulfill their affirmatively furthering obligation. So the left unsaid was that HUD might do if suburbs don't take the steps. So what was in place was say, hey, if you receive federal funding, we need you to include the disadvantage. But there was nothing put into place to say, if you don't do it, we're going to take the benefits, the tax benefits, and all the monies that we gave you away. There was no penalty. This is Obama, our first black president, who did not enforce that this would happen. He just put up a rule. His administration put up a rule. So once again, when people ask you, did Obama do anything for the disadvantaged, or did he do anything for black people? You can say, hell no.
Come on, brother T.
Say hell no. And say it with your chest out. Because he could have pushed this to happen. Once again, as I explained earlier, Section 8 was used. And it was found that it was used to keep blacks in segregated communities, to keep them amongst themselves and the communities that have limited resources. Once again, there's no need to put a nice shiny exterior to a car without fixing the engine. The engine, it's still an old engine. Fix the engine too.
Come on.
Allow me to move further and longer. Don't give me a shiny exterior and nice wheels. You got to fix the engine as well.
Come
So
on.
this rule only was ability to embellish the outside, but not fix the inside issue, which was moving us closer into a community that could have the resources needed for us to benefit in 2022 and beyond. So this is what the Obama administration in this part of the chapter did not do with HUD. Dr. Bach, you want to go a little?
Speak your speech. Speak your speech. Speak your speech.
She found it.
I had to find it, Brother T, because you were going in. You was like, hell no. I wanted to do it, but I just didn't want. I said, this is a nice clip. I said, Brother T's going in. This is a nice clip for Instagram, you know? And so I said, I don't want to interrupt, but I wanted you to speak your speech. And so, yeah, we can move on to the next section. You was getting ready to talk about Romney. And when I saw that, Brother T, I was wondering, was there any type of relation to like Mitch or Mitch? Yeah, okay, there it is.
That's his daddy.
That's his daddy. Okay, go ahead, break down Romney. So Romney had proposed this open communities program, and the Republican voters went crazy. Mm-hmm. So, Brother T, you want me to go in, or you want to describe it?
Let me break down the Romney part. I want you to go into deep. I'm going to
because you killed
the first part.
Go ahead.
So in 1970, stung by the riots in more than 100 cities by angry, embittered African Americans, HUD Secretary George Romney tried to pursue integration more vigorously than any other administration. All right, this is the reason why. Even before since, observing that the federal government had imposed a suburban white noose around the urban African American neighborhoods. Romney devised a program he called Open Communities that would deny federal funds for water and sewer upgrades, green space, sidewalk improvements, and other projects for which HUD financial support is needed. To suburbs that hadn't been revised their exclusionary zoning laws to permit construction of subsidized apartments for lower incomes African Americans. Now, Dr. Mai, I want you to go further. The reason why I wanted to mention that, because if anyone knows about his son, Mick wasn't about none of that.
No.
But the reason why George, his father, was about that is because he learned. He went to do the studies. He went to the things that were happening at the time. Like, why is this happening? This is why he went full flip mode to say, hey, let me be more proactive about this open communities, and let me enforce and have government influence. If you want funding, I want to do something for it. Now, I'm glad that the author put it in this order. He showed what Obama didn't do, and he showed what Romney here was trying to do.
Right.
He was trying to say, well, let's enforce it. Obama didn't even say enforce. He put a rule. Romney said, let's do it. Let's make it happen. Even when he was put out of his position, even though the government said, nope, you can't do it. We're not allowing this to happen. He was asked to leave his position. So it showed that it could be done if the person had the balls enough to get it done. That's it.
No, come on. That's right. That's right. It's, and I love, like you said, how it showed in, like you said, the order in which he did it, right? But Obama and how Obama went about it, and then how this white dude went about it. And then he kind of briefly mentioned the coroner report. Yeah, I didn't know that when I read this, Brother T, it said it followed his whole proposal. It said followed upon the release of a widely discussed report on the causes of African-American rioting published by an investigatory commission appointed by President Johnson and chaired by Illinois Governor Otto Carner. So I didn't know that was the coroner report. Yeah, I didn't know that. And so I didn't know it was the same one until I looked it up, and I was like, oh, that's the coroner report. And Brother T, I think that we should actually one day like read it and kind of break it down. I think it would be a good history lesson. I've never read the report. Have you?
No.
Okay, is it like a lengthy report? Let me look it up. Somebody look it up for me real fast. The Kerner, I keep saying Kerner report. Somebody look it up and let me know how many pages is it, and that'll determine whether we take some time out to discuss it, brother T, because we got a
That
bunch.
and the Monahan report
The
are two,
Monahan report. Yeah,
are
yeah,
two
yeah.
different.
So yeah, let us know those reports, family. Throw it in the chat. The Monahan report and the Kerner report. How many pages are those reports? Okay, let me know in the chat. I also want to shout out Blockchain
There you go.
Revolutionary. Yeah,
McGraw Hill.
Blockchain said, yeah, McGraw Hill Education, World Geography. He says textbook called Slaves, Workers, and
Immigrants.
Immigrants.
Good gracious.
Thank you, Blockchain. Appreciate you, family. Thank you so much, Blockchain. I wanted to show that
Thank
up.
you. This
Yeah.
is the fear they have. Once we're armed with the information, now we know that we can't go for their tricks. We won't be rocked to sleep. We know what we need to do when it's time for election. This is why it's important for us not to let this stuff die. Look what's happening, Dr. Ma'ad, on every major platform that we shared during the week. Dr. Boyce Watson, Lord Jamar, everyone's sharing this information. It's time to wake up, to understand that we want to build our communities. We have to know exactly all the obstacles that we're putting in our place to make sure that we can bulldoze them things down when it's time to build ours. This is the whole point of this information.
Whoo! Brother Shemsu said George W. Romney was governor of Detroit, Michigan in 1967, riot and put black people in cages at Detroit Tiger Stadium, brought in the National Guard in Detroit. That's why I love Brother Shemsu. He always come with some stuff. He said George Romney declared martial law on blacks. You know, he's from Detroit, so we know, oh man. All right, and then the corner report. Jesus, oh, that's a whole book club.
440.
That's a whole other book club. Thank you, Queen. I
Yeah.
mean, and she said
They went in the
400.
report.
Yeah, no, we won't be reading that report. And so,
So
what about the Monahan report? What about the?
that's pretty long. That's long too, but it's less. Even if we break down, someone did it. Even if we break down some parts of this, maybe we can drag parts or you know
I
of
hear what you're saying. Like
of it.
grab some. We'll have to maybe read all of it, but just grab some of the
Yeah,
meat.
some things
Grab the meat and.
because the Monahan report definitely helped us understand that Lincoln, not sorry, that Nixon administration, and I'm sure this report will help us understand what Ronnie want to do. Okay, and Brother Shimshu is correct. Romney, I'm sure he had a lot of definitely had this on his hands. The author presented him in his book showing what Obama could have done, what he decided to do with the same policy, with the same powers. Because we said Obama could did it, but he didn't have the power. He had to wait. This one man who was not president was trying to do the same thing with the segregation aspect. That's what he was focusing on. You know, I'm sure he was a devil in some of the things he
Absolutely,
did. But
absolutely.
we have to push the comparative aspect of this chapter of what Obama did not do, but we gave him excuses. We said, "Oh, he can't do it. He can't do it." He could have done it. He could have been the deciding factor to make sure that that rule was enforced, to make sure that there was no federal funding given to anybody who excluded this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, Brother T, in his next section, this is when he started laying out different programs that we could implement to fix, the effects of, de jure segregation. The first program, and family, I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but I will list them. The first program, he said, was one to resell properties, right, to qualified African Americans for $75,000. Let me tell you where he got that number from. So in the Levittown developments that were like literally, I believe they were all over America. I know they was in Philadelphia. It was different parts of America where they created the Levittown, developments. And he said that back, I believe the previous chapter, Ricard Rothstein stated that those homes were purchased at around 75,000 in today's value. So 7 to 8,000 during that time, which would be equivalent to 75,000 in today's value. So, and those houses are now worth $350,000. So he's saying Well, let some African Americans grab those houses that their ancestors couldn't afford at that particular time at the dollar amount that their ancestors would have purchased those homes, right? And so that was the first proposal. The second proposal, he said that provide federal subsidies for subsidies. I'm sorry, federal subsidies for middle class African Americans to purchase home in suburbs that have been racially exclusive, right? So that's another program. Another program, he said, to put a ban on racial ordinances. And we already talked about racial ordinances in previous chapter. These were rules, zoning rules. And so, black people couldn't live here, or the land was rezoned and classified as, industrial versus residential and all of that stuff. So he said, let's put a ban on zoning ordinances that prohibit, multifamily housing and that require all single family homes in the neighborhood to be built on large lots with high minimum requirements for square footage. So let's do away with these zoning ordinances. Another program he proposed was a tax code. He was saying that Congress could amend, the tax code to deny the mortgage interest deduction to property owners in suburbs who do not have or are not taking aggressive steps to attract their fair share of low and moderate income housing, both multi-unit and single family, whether for rental or for sale. Another program, he gets into the fair share requirements. He talked about two states that implemented this whole fair share thing, and it was New Jersey and Massachusetts. It said they had a fair share requirement that was based on income. It said not race. And it says he says they address the isolation of low income families in urban areas and their absence from middle class suburbs. They make a contribution to integration, but they do not take the additional step of helping to integrate middle income African American families into white middle class suburbs. Another program he proposed was inclusionary zoning. Okay, that's at the bottom of page 205. He says some municipalities have inclusionary zoning ordinances that accomplish at a local level what the New Jersey and Massachusetts programs do statewide. Okay, so this inclusionary zoning ordinances. Okay, and then he mentioned Montgomery County, brother T, as an example. And I was like, wow, I know that Montgomery County and Prince George's County, it costs money to live there. It's high. I remember I used to deal with someone out there, and so it was high out there. So that's how I knew. But it says Montgomery County, Maryland, has a strong countrywide inclusionary zoning ordinance. So it says, like most such regulation, it requires developers and even the most affluent communities to set aside a percentage of units. In the case of Montgomery County, 12 to 15% for moderate income families. It then goes further. The Public Housing Authority purchases a third of these set aside units for rental to the lowest income families. The program's success is evidenced by the measurably higher achievement of low income African American children who live and attend school in the country's wealthiest suburbs. Montgomery County's program should be widely duplicated. Another program he mentioned was the Fair Share Act. Okay, says in 1993, a quarter century after the Fair Housing Act was enacted, John Boger, a University of North Carolina law professor, lamented the subsequent lack of progress toward residential integration. He suggested a national Fair Share Act that would require every state to establish mechanisms to ensure that each of its suburban or municipal jurisdictions houses a representative share of the African American as well as low and moderate income populations in its metropolitan region. So that was one problem. Another program. At the bottom of 207, Brother T, he talks about how people sued, how there were, a lot of civil rights lawsuits, right? It says that have led to few, innovative programs that integrate low income families into middle class neighborhoods. It says in 1995, the American Civil Liberties Unit of Maryland sued HUD, I said, God dang, it's always Baltimore. Sued HUD and the Baltimore Housing Authority became because as these agencies demolish public housing projects. And I remember when they did this, it says they resettled frequently with Section 8 vouchers almost exclusively in segregated low income areas. You talked about this earlier, Brother T. It says the lawsuit resulted in commitments by the federal and local governments to support the former residents in moving to high opportunity suburbs. Brother T. So go to page 208 and he mentions the mobility program, right? That they created. And it says the mobility program not only places voucher holders in apartments, it also purchases houses on the open market and then rents them to program participants. So, so he's saying basically that if we go to court, sometimes we may have to sue, to hold these people accountable. And that's when they'll come up with these innovative programs to integrate us into their communities. So he goes on to say that a similar program arose from a lawsuit in 1985 by a civil rights group against the Dallas Housing Authority and HUD over their use of public housing or Section 8 programs to perpetuate segregation. Okay, so it says, as in Baltimore, the Dallas program desegregates only a small percentage of families who are eligible for housing assistance. Brother T?
Woo, Dr. Mine, you ran through that thing, but I tell you, Dr.
We almost
Mine,
did it. Look, we got a
yes,
few more pages. I just wanted to get
yes.
us through. That's all.
I tell you, you went through all my highlighted points. But let me go to this one point, Dr. Mine. You did a good job. I tell you, this was the doctor mind.
No,
Oh,
appreciate it.
the
Appreciate it, Brother
doctor's
T.
mind. That's what I call it. Look, out of all the programs,
Mhm.
what is more is I can justify that I would agree with is looking at what our grandparents would have paid for their home
Yeah.
and compared to what $75,000 home would be today. That would be almost a $225,000 reparation check just for the homes. I don't want to end with that. That right there will least, because what we're forced to do is pay for stuff at today's cost.
That's right.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Say
So
that one more
we
time. But hold on, brother. Please say that again.
say yesterday's price is not today's price. So we are paying today and that's to catch up. Once again, competition to make sure, hey, we'll give you the ability to buy the house, but you want to be so far behind. But we have the ability of $225,000 plus dollars in equity. So giving us the funds and the ability to have that. Now, let's address this one thing. This year, we heard about this Bank of America initiative to give to African Americans and Hispanics ability to buy a house. Now, to buy this house, the bank is supposedly dressed this beautiful thing up to give us the ability to be homeowners, but we had to be homeowners in impoverished neighborhoods. Once again, a program created to put us in impoverished neighborhoods where health issues could be prevalent for our children and resources can be dry. So once again, we have to be aware. The politicians in Alabama and those places this was initiated at could have said, hey, hold up, time out. This is good, Bank of America, because we asked for this at the last recession. That the banks didn't give us money for funding for homes and we didn't get funding for businesses. So now I need you to go back and revise this. Give us funding so we can move in better neighborhoods and a better plot of land to build our neighborhoods. We don't have to integrate, but we can find a better plot of land that we can build new homes in a healthy environment and give us business loans based off these black businesses that we have here. We want a supermarket. We want a resource center. We want this and this and this.
That's
And
right.
it's Community Bank of America. Now that you want to do something, if you really want to be fruitful, allow us the resources to build a fruitful and thriving environment. So that's one thing I wanted to bring. And that's today, based off what was given to us this year, off this supposedly handout from Bank of America, how we could have used this information to ask for something or grab the funding to do something bigger and better. So that's what I wanted to say on that part as we go further.
No, absolutely. That was a powerful point. Very wonderful points.
I just wanted to make sure I made that. I'm like, you know what? Here, once again, they playing that game, and we just got past this bone this year. Basic goes on 210. It says state policy could have improved the potential Section 8 to promote integration in Illinois presently extends the property tax reduction to landlords in low poverty neighborhoods who rent their voucher holders. Other states should do likewise. The Federal Department of Treasury should require states to distribute the low income housing tax credits to developers building and integrated high opportunity neighborhoods. So once again, this goes on really basically, Dr. Ma'at, talk about what you mentioned about the tax benefits to new developers. And that's something also that we need. We need Black developers to take advantage of this money. The money's is there.
That's right.
But a Black developer with the mind to make sure that we're building a community that benefits us. Now, I understand we can't colorfully say it's only for us because they'll find some way to block it and say that it's unconstitutionally. Now, today, they can.
Right now, today, right? When
right?
It's right.
But it's nothing wrong with saying, hey, we want to make sure we go into inclusive neighborhoods, but also make sure that we go to back to the community and put houses there as well. It can be deals because the government will fund people who build homes. So we can benefit from this. Now we have to get our great minds together, our politicians and our developers and our people who can contribute money to build this neighborhood, because this right here shows you it can be done because they're giving tax benefits and funding to developers, right? So it goes on to say the federal Department of Treasury should require states to distribute low-income housing tax credits to developers. Okay, then it goes on to page 211.
Read that. That's powerful. Revitalization. Read that.
Revitalization does generally occur when a neighborhood becomes attractive to the middle class. But all too often, the gentrification that follows does not include strict enforcement of inclusionary zoning principles, and it gradually drives the African American poor out of now upgraded neighborhoods and into newly segregated inner ring suburbs. So I always wondered, like, why was all the Blacks in Baltimore moving out in the county? This is the reason why. We was like, why? Because you remember, everybody was moving from the inner city to the county, and all the whites said, you know what, it's time to roll. In his book, in his chapter, he also said that whites and Blacks see integration differently. Blacks see integration as 50-50. 50% of Blacks live in the community along with whites or others. Whites say 90% of them and 10% of other.
Yeah, but facts.
If that number moves past that 10%,
white
they out. So now they start creating more highways to get them closer to their job and workplace, and they go back into the city. Exactly what's happening in Baltimore. They start building condominiums and places across Federal Hill and the harbor because they say, you know what? We move African Americans to the county. It's time to roll. So it just shows you that the difference in the mindset of what we say, hey, we don't mind integration because we see integration as 50-50. They see integration as more than 5 Blacks live in my block. I got to go. I got to go. So unfortunately, it's a different mindset. So that I'm glad you told me to pinpoint that part of the chapter.
Absolutely. And I want to just go back to page 209 where he drives home the point that the Section 8 voucher program is not an entitlement. You know, they always, white folks act like, you know, when we get things, it's a handout. It's an entitlement. He says that many more eligible families don't receive vouchers that do. It says because Section 8 budgetary appropriations are too small. It says in 2015, approximately 1 million families had vouchers, but another 6 million who qualify when without them. It says there are long waiting lists for vouchers in every city that has a large African-American low-income population. Indeed, in many cities, the waiting lists have been closed. So in addition to prohibiting discrimination against voucher holders, Congress should appropriate funds to provide vouchers for all whose low income status qualifies. So I love what he says that, like I said, it's not the voucher program is not entitlement. You know what I mean? And he breaks down why it isn't. And so I thought that was powerful. So this is the last section, family, where he talks about a husband and wife team, Frank and Rosalie Stevenson, and how they raised their daughters in a segregated Richmond neighborhood, okay, right in California. Okay. And it says around the 50s or 60s, the girls were in, primary grades. And it says that, within Richmond, which is an area in South Carolina, area in California, it says those schools were very segregated. He mentioned one school called the Paris School. It says it had a 93% Black enrollment in 1967, and it was situated west of the railroad tracks. Of course, we all know, family, that's how they separated the white neighborhoods and the Black neighborhoods. You knew that we lived on the other side of the tracks. And I remember, I think it was either my mother, my aunt, or my grandmother, they said that when you look across those tracks, the white folks had the nice roads, but then where we were living, it was dirt roads. Roads were messed up and they were dirt roads or whatever. But that's how you could tell. So anyway, it says that the Paris School was located west of the railroad tracks in a neighborhood that included 3 blocks that had remained white. And it said the school board carved the 3-block strip out of Paris attendance zone and assigned those students who lived there to attend all white betting school across the railroad tracks. So it says the school that the Stevenson's daughters attended, R.E.A.D Elementary School, it said it was unincorporated. It was in unincorporated North Richmond, and it was west of the railroad tracks as well. And it said that, in 1968, when the school became so overcrowded that the school district had to respond, it says, meanwhile, nearby schools in white neighborhoods had empty seats as a growing number of white families left Richmond for the suburbs. But instead of allowing African-American children to occupy those seats, the district decided to build an addition to R.E.A.D, so the Black school. So we're going to add on some space to the Black school, and we don't want to put you in the white school by any means necessary. And it says this was such an obvious attempt to perpetuate segregation that civil rights groups sued. And so it's going into how they sued and how, the judge, it says the trial judge ordered integration and later told an interviewer that he had been offended by the racially biased testimony of the school board member who defended the district policy. So he does go on to say that. But let me tell you what was the meat and the potatoes right here for me, Brother T. So he mentions Terry, the youngest of the Stevenson girls. It says she graduated in 1970. Off and on, she took community college courses, but never completed a college degree. She worked all of her life in daycare centers and as a nursing assistant and had 6 children of her own. So then it says Terry Stevenson's 2 sons. So now we're getting into the grandchildren of Frank and Rosalie Stevenson. So their children had to go to segregated schools. So their opportunities were limited, right? So she stayed in, I think, what does it say? She was a what again, Brother T? Let me see. Terry she worked all her life in daycare at a daycare center and as a nursing assistant. And so, she didn't really make a lot of money, Brother T, in those professions. So then she ended up having 2 sons who were warehouse workers. It says of her 4 daughters, 2 are certified nurse assistants. So they were CNAs. It says 1 answers the phone inquiries at a bank. 1 is a security guard. And it says her sisters also have children, and they include a paralegal working at a law firm, a pharmacist assistant, a clerical worker at a government social service agency, and a department store sales clerk. Now, Brother T, when I read this last paragraph, I actually posed the same questions to my mother when I started reflecting on why my grandmother had a 6th grade education. Why my mother grew up impoverished, to a family of 7, and where my grandmother was scrubbing the homes of white people to make ends meet. She used to go to Park Heights in Jewtown, and she did domestic work. So she would wash clothes and she worked in their houses. And she used to make, I think it was $20 a week, $15 a week, something like that. And then eventually she got a job working in the laundry department at Shepherd Pratt Hospital. And so, again, making that sort of money with 7 children, you can imagine the lifestyle that my mother had, growing up, her and her siblings. And then my cousin's mother, who lived across the street from my grandmother, her mother had 7 children. And her mother shared with her, she remember having to wipe her butt with bags, grocery market paper bags, because they didn't have toilet paper sometimes. My mother told me they remember eating sugar sandwiches or syrup sandwiches because sometimes it wasn't anything to eat in there. Okay. And so I sit there, and Brother T, it angers me because I look at what they did to us, the economic position that they put us in, and how that impacted generations, Brother T. And so at the end of this paragraph, he ends the chapter with saying, what might have become of the Stevensons' grandchildren if their parents had grown up and attended school in an integrated Milpitas, not in a de jure segregated Richmond? Should they now have partners with similar occupations, their household incomes are unlikely to rise above the 4th income quintile of Americans. How much further on the social economic ladder would they have been to climb if they had grown up in a well-educated household as a result of Terry and her sisters being permitted to attend a high school that was designated for students who could profit from academic program rather than instead offered manual training. It says, how different might the lives of the Stevenson grandchildren have been were it not for the federal government's unconstitutional determination to segregate their grandparents and their parents as well? What do we, the American community, owe this family in this in future generations for their loss of opportunity? How might we fulfill this obligation? Brother T, I asked my mother and them, what would have happened had we had got out, we flourished during Reconstruction, and we were able to build up our own communities and sustain our own communities, Brother T, and we had the resources, to do that. Where would we have been, right? My grandmother wouldn't have been scrubbing homes of white people, right? And operating with a 6th grade education. My mother actually taught my grandmother how to read because she became a teacher, and she taught at Harford Institute at nighttime, which it was an adult class, a reading class, right in the hood. And my grandmother attended the class, and that's how she learned how to read and write. Okay. Her daughter became a teacher, and that's what happened, Brother T. So, how different would my grandmother's life have been? Her mother's life, right? Her father's life, my uncles, my aunts, us, our lives, had we had the opportunity, Brother T, to flourish post-chattel slavery in America and not go into Jim Crow semi-slavery, right? What kind of quality of life would my predecessors have had? Thus, their descendants have. I ask myself, and it angers me, Brother T. It angers me. So anyway, Brother T, do you have any closing words? We just knocked out chapter 12 of The Color of Law. We just locked up. I gotta give us a daggone bomb. I gotta drop a bomb for us, Brother T. Come on, Brother T.
Woo.
Any closing words?
Dr. Mott, powerful closing. I dare not say anything to add on to that bomb you just dropped. I'm glad we had the opportunity to read this book, to explain this book, and for everyone, all 6,500 of you in the chat week by week to come by to share with us, to share your comments, your knowledge, your presence has been awesome. I think if we're armed with this information, we'll have what we need to continue to build upon, to do what we need to do. And this opened up a lot of closed doors in my mind about why we're in the situation that we're in. And that part that you just read, Dr. Ma'at, demonstrated, it gave an illustration exactly why we stand and why we should continue to fight on to get this job done.
Absolutely. But he's just talking about how we just would if we were just integrated, we would have been better off. Hell no. If we would have been allowed to flourish,
Nourish.
if we would have been allowed to flourish in our communities, because black people were doing that. We were building communities. And remember,
Mm-hmm.
Brother T, we were doing our thing and when it got destroyed.
It was the
They built them.
competition.
Yeah, it's competition. They
But
destroyed them. So what would have happened? It had those Do you remember? I was looking at doing my little research on Black Wall Street, and I'm looking at the brother right now who owned the hotel
mm-hmm.
in on Black Wall Street. What would have happened to his descendants, Brother T, if he would be able to open up a chain of hotels all over America, like the Hilton hotel chain, right, or the
Sure.
Marriott?
Mm-hmm.
What would have what amount of wealth would he had generated for
Mm-hmm.
himself and for his descendants, Brother T? You know what I mean? And so,
Your international markets and stuff like that.
absolutely.
International lands like the Hilton, like the Marriott. If we had the ability to benefit from that
Yeah, so
commerce.
so he's advocating if they would have went to integrated schools and they would have been able to get all these other opportunities, maybe they would have. But Brother T, what I'm saying is, damn, what if we would have had the opportunity to just flourish on our own?
Mm-hmm.
Where would we be? Where would we be? And shout out to Mr. Pirate Brain. He said, I want my reparations.
Versions, right? Most definitely, most
Give me
definitely.
my reparations, man. Give me
One
my
for,
reparations. Go
for
ahead, Brother
those
T.
for those who have the book, he has answers and answer and questions. In a couple pages, like people who had like, hey, questions like, I'm not, I shouldn't be responsible for what my ancestors did. Why must I pay? And he has like a little rebuttal why it is important for us, for all Americans, to take this in consideration and right the wrong. So for those who have the book, please dive into that. He even have pages in the book that gives you all the resources where you can find the laws and where he got his information from. So this book is a good resource for us to use. Even if he cried on integration, we understand. Hey, that's not what we need. We need to know all the trappings, and we need to know how to fix it. So um, I just wanted to make sure I said that this book did have a lot of more resources past this chapter 12.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that, Brother T. Also, family, I want to remind you one more time to grab these 4 books. All right, for the new year, Brother T and I will not be live again for the R.E.A.D Book Club until let me look at let me look at the calendar right now and I'll give you all the date. We'll be back, yeah, around like the 22nd of January or the 15th. Well,
22nd. So you be out of the country. I think you stated that.
yeah, so yeah. So not the 15th, the 22nd, because that's when the semester starts up again for me. So around the 22nd, family. All right, in January. Brother T, is the 22nd work for you?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Okay, so the Brother T said, yeah, give me a break. Give me a break. Give me a break. Give me a break.
I mean,
January the 22nd, family, we will be
mm,
back with the R.E.A.D Book Club. And remember, we're also going to start up the R.E.A.D Junior Book Club, okay, on the 22nd at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you get the book for your child. Sister Crystal Denise, she dropped the book in the chat, okay, earlier. And I also showed it on the screen earlier. I would have to scroll up to find it, but she dropped the link in the chat. And I'll make sure that I post the book and stuff like that, on my social media pages so you can get the title and make sure you get it. Our
mm,
young people will be here on this platform live at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, starting on
mm.
January 22nd.
And join the panel. Join
Come
the
on.
panel.
Yeah. Join the panel. And then
That's
Brother T and I will be back on January the 22nd with the R.E.A.D Book Club at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Family, make sure you get these 4 books. They Were Her Property by Dr. Stephanie Rogers, Slavery by Another Name, When Affirmative Action Was White, and last but not least, From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century by Dr. William Sandy Darity. Go ahead, Brother T, close us out.
family. I can't wait to see you in January. For those, please follow Dr. Ma'at's platforms because she'll be dropping fire, 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 5 days a week. And we look forward to seeing you next year with these books. And like I said, please join the panel. We welcome you for discussion. We want to grow the R.E.A.D Book Club, and we want it to be mentioned on all platforms. But we could not do it without this platform of Dr. Ma'at and you, the listening family and audience.
All right. All right, family. Have a blacktastic week. I'll try to go live tomorrow or Tuesday, or even when I'm at the rally, I'll try to go live. All right. So just make sure you hit the notification bell and hit all notifications so that whenever I go live, you will be notified. And if I don't hear from you this week, if I don't see you, peace and love to the Ma'adian family, and have a beautiful and blacktastic week. Peace and black power. Amani na